Hi everybody, welcome back. My name is Emmanuel, and in this video I'll be talking about CSS specificity. But before we start with that, I want to point out, or I want to explain the cascading nature of style sheets, because a friend of mine told me, dude, you didn't say anything about cascading style in the CSS, and yes, that should have been in the first lesson. But we've already seen the cascading nature of style sheets. And of course, CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And we've seen the nature of that cascading in our previous lessons. If, in this case, we decide to make the paragraph of the color red, then it's going to cascade to not only the first paragraph element, but to the second. And if we would have the third, the fourth, the fifth, and so forth. If we would decide to style the H2 with the color of blue, then it will cascade to the other one if we would have one, and we can even make one right now. Blue heading, and of course it's not going to affect the third heading. So basically that is the way that the cascading works. It just goes from one item to another that is meeting the criteria that we defined, be it a tag element, be it a class, and so on. Now, since I know you guys got that and it's an easy topic, let's get into specificity in CSS, because this is where stuff gets interesting. In our current case, we made the paragraph of the color, a color of red. But what happens if we say the body paragraph should have the color of blue? Of course, it makes the paragraph blue now, because the order in which you write your CSS also matters, because the later the code is in your CSS, the more important it will be, right? Because if we write like this, only the paragraph color blue, of course that works. If we move it one line over it, the blue will be overridden by the color red, and that makes sense. So we can swap these and it's gonna work as we expect. But if you go back and we say body P is going to be the color blue, if we move it up top, what's gonna happen? Is it gonna be red or is it gonna be blue? Let's see what happens. It's going to be blue. And why is that? Nope. Okay, I'm gonna tell you why that is. And this is because of specificity of that thing. That sounds complicated. It might be a little bit to grasp in the first few tries, but you're gonna get it down the line. So let's just imagine that one of these tags is worth a point. In this case, the P tag is worth 1 point, and the body P tag, since it has 2 tags, is gonna be worth 2 points. So no matter where this is gonna be, this one is going to win because it has 2 points, not 1 point, even if it's before in the CSS lines. That makes sense so far, right? But what happens if to the class large we decide to add a color, a different color? So if we say large is going to be, well, it should have a font size, but for the sake, let's rename it. That will be even better. Let's call this green. Green is going to have the color of green. And of course it acts as it should. What if we move it up top? Oh, like that. It still has the color green. But why is it working this way? Because it's got like only 1 tag. Well, that's because the class selector has a higher number of points. You can imagine it has something like 10 points, if that makes any sense. So, okay, that doesn't really work, the commenting here. So I'm just going to put it like, no, I'm not gonna put it in any other way. I'm gonna show you even better way soon. So right now we know that a class is worth more points than, let's say, 10 of these. So if you would say P, that's still not going to win over the class. It's fuzzy, I know, it sounds weird. Let's do another example, an even worse one for that matter. ID is going to be some color. And now if we say the heading 3 should be color red, it works as we expect. If we say body, body h3 should have the color of maroon, then again it works as we expected. What if we give it a class as well? Let's see, class, and let's make this sky blue or something. Sky blue. I think that should be a color. So sky blue is going to be color, is it sky blue? Yes, there is a color called sky blue. And so right now it works as expected. First it took the red color, but since we added 2 tags, that means it has 2 points. Since this one has 10 points, then it's going to work better. It's going to be, more powerful than the other one. And what if we add body h3 with a class of sky blue to be something other than sky blue? Or actually, let's just keep it at sky blue. And let's delete this. So right now, in theory, this line has a lot of points. It has 1, 2 plus 10, it has 11 points. Okay, but what if we decide to style it with some ID? So if some color has the color of light gray, now how did that win? Because this is when things get interesting in specificity. Well, this is actually not worth 10 points. And this is not really worth 1 point. Well, it kind of is, but it's not. And for explanation purposes, I had to make a separate file. Imagine like this. Sorry, I had to rearrange some of the elements here because I made a small mistake. So, imagine like this, that one of these tags is not actually worth 1 point, but it's worth 1 point in here. So it will be worth 0, 0, 0, 1. So an element, whoa, crazy kids with skateboards. Damn kids. So an element is worth 1 point when you specify it in CSS. A class is worth another point. So in our case right here, this would be worth 1 and 2. So it is kind of 12, but it's not really 12. Because when we style something with an ID, it's gonna trample everything else, because it's going to have, boom, it's gonna have 1 here. And it's going to have something like 100. And the most powerful, or the one that has the highest priority, is the inline. And so if you define something, let's make just another heading 3 here with title. I can write how many times I would want in the CSS any kind of styling, but it's going to lose if I write style equals to, I don't know, color red. So this inline styling is always going to win. This is going to be the most important. That's why in JavaScript the styling mostly is done here. You can of course edit the CSS, but it's mostly done inline. And the reason for that is because with JavaScript you want to rewrite something after you load the page up. So after you've done some stuff, you want to edit it inline, and that should have the highest priority, and it does. So if you have trouble with this, and I know sometimes I do, you can just imagine this kind of a box system. An element is, let me just delete this. An element is worth points in the last box. Classes and attributes go here, IDs go here, and inline goes here. Of course, if we would have had some styling for the H3 which was not referring to the color, so let's say if we had the font size and so on, that will be inherited. But if we had defined the color as being something like maybe a red like this one in the box, then it would still lose to the inline styling. So that's the idea in the big lines, in the big picture, I'm sorry. That's the power of specificity. Those are the powers of styling with IDs, with classes, and with inline styling, which should be only done in extreme cases, so to say, in JavaScript. And now that we're at the chapter about specificity, you always have to be careful of how specific you are with your elements. And for that, let me just show you some examples in here. So I just created another div to wrap everything around it. For example, if you would want to, let's just say we want to add a span right in this paragraph. So we add a span in here with some text. And if you want to have this span bold with the text here, one of the ways would be, of course, we could go through the whole DOM. We could say body, we could say div, we could say paragraph, which has that span and is going to have the font weight of being, I don't know, 800 or something. And that just made our span bold. And you're pretty specific with this. So the more specific you are, the better, right? Well, not exactly, because this is hard to read. Because you have to go body, span, and nobody writes it with body. So you would actually write it with div, and then paragraph, and then span. So this is, first of all, pretty hard to read. And then it's also hard for the browser to interpret because it has to scan through all these elements and actually find it. So the better solution would be, adding a class which will be called bold. And then you would just define the class here as being bold. And only in the cases when you would want to override that, you could, of course, with either with another class, but you should just remove the class. If, for example, you want it to not be bold. I hope that made any sense. So specificity is good. Specificity is important to understand. Always think about this this box calculation system. And I'm also going to put a link in for an awesome project made by Keegan, I think, Keegan Street, built by Keegan Street, probably a company. And it's this website where you can see how specific your styling is. So if we say, if we define only a tag, you can see that it has a point right there. If we decide to add a class, then it's going to be here. If we add an ID, it's going to be here. And I don't even know how the hell do you define inline styling to actually get a point there. But you could go, of course, even deeper. Paragraph, header, span, another class. And then you can see how powerful or how specific your how specific your styling is. But again, you wouldn't write it like this. This is just too much, too long, too hard to read. So always remember that inline is going to be the most powerful, then IDs, then classes, and then elements. One thing that I want to add before going further is that if you add a class, that will always be more powerful than a lot of elements. Let's say we have a link, we have a paragraph, we have a span, and then we just repeat that AP span P. And you can see that you can go really large with this number. I'm actually not sure how much you can go with it. Obviously you can go in its in the hundreds. But this will not be as powerful as something as simple as a class. So that's why the initial system with 1 point for elements, 10 points for class is not really valid. The same goes for IDs. So you can add as many classes as you want. An ID will always trump will always be more powerful than a class. So yeah, that was about it. I'm gonna put the link in the description below. And just remember that now we know how to understand, or how to work with specificity, how to work with our files, and how to style them and how to structure them. I think that was about it for this lesson. Now, in the next one, we'll be talking about selectors, and I hope everything was clear. If not, please leave me a comment in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next lesson. Thank you.